Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this fireside chat. I'm Felix, the head of ecosystem at Symbiotic. Symbiotic is a modular shared security protocol, and here with
I'm
Nick.
Nick, one of co-founders at Mellow, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, so we also have an unmoderated session going on. We were thinking to basically go through some of the current state of Symbiotic and explaining some of the concepts, also the interaction with Mellow, with LRTs, and the sort of second order effects there. Since that's the title of the fireside, right? What is it? DeFi on top of Restaking. So basically, all the integrations that follow from that, and how like that ecosystem is shaping up and how it will develop. So. Yeah, maybe since I'm talking, maybe you can start a bit from your perspective. What is Mellow? How does it work with Symbiotic? Just the very basics, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, I think like probably we will cover not just things around DeFi, right, and more high-level concepts and things like how things work with the restaking and LRTs, and what's the dynamics between the different parts of the ecosystem. And starting from Mellow perspective, so like it's all about marketplaces where we have lots of different entities working with those marketplaces. Like Symbiotic, it's a marketplace where we have the networks, we have the node operators, and those are two main entities working with this marketplace. In our case, it's like the different part of the spectrum where we have LPs, we have also networks, we have restaking, we have the side of DeFi integrations, and also like for both Symbiotic and Mellow, different types of assets that are enabled in the system to get restaked. So those are completely different parts of the ecosystem and parts of the marketplace that interact with both systems. In case of Mellow, also we're adding curators who are launching their own ecosystems on top of Mellow to interact with restaking and to provide different services. All of them are really different in terms of how they manage the risk, how they integrate into DeFi ecosystem. And yeah, so I think it's like two separate parts of the spectrum in terms of marketplace. And like it's different approaches to getting, like not different approaches, but different sides, side of liquidity, side of demand. And that's what we're all covering.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so basically, we also earlier had like Gauntlet here presenting a lot, kind of the data. I think maybe it makes sense also to go a bit back and just talk about the current state. You know, what do we have? So basically, Symbiotic, we came out of stealth in June of this year and basically started the liquidity side, where basically you can deposit initially ETH assets, ETH LSTs, and have added other assets since that, basically building on the demand that we are seeing from network builders that are trying to build decentralized infrastructure networks on top of Symbiotic, and basically bootstrapping the liquidity for those builders that want the economic security in the future. And now, together with that, like Mellow actually also launched their LRT product, or like LRT infrastructure product. And so as we're like now basically I guess 3 months into it, we have seen like the ecosystem develop a bit. We have a bunch of networks and partners building on Symbiotic. We have like 40 teams that we announced that are building decentralized networks of various kinds. It's interoperability protocols between Bitcoin, Ethereum, Oracle networks, decentralized sequencing, you name it. And we also have seen the LRT ecosystem starting. So maybe Nick, you can share a bit how that has shaped up on your end and what you've been seeing.
Yeah, I would probably first ask one question, because I'm curious like how you see the part on which assets are mostly will be mostly utilized by the networks, because it's something that we see from our end as well. And I think it's important like how you think the centralization of liquidity sources or decentralization of liquidity sources So what's your take on that?
Right. So yeah, it's a very interesting question. Like, what makes a good collateral for a restake network? I think there's like these prime assets that are kind of no-brainers to add, but then there's like always multiple flavors of them, right? So we started from the basis of ETH, and then you have like Ethereum LSDs, you have of course like Lido as the leader there. So like most of the TVL actually in Symbiotic is SDETH, and then we also added Bitcoin as obviously that's kind of digital gold. That's a big asset that everyone like believes in, and that has more stability and probably like better sort of capital efficiency in terms of being used and doesn't have other utilities. So the cool thing about BTC, I guess, is that you cannot use it that much in other ways. So adding it as a securing asset, and there's a lot of it, so you can pretty cheaply like access that. And other assets we've been adding is also like kind of just governance tokens of projects working with Symbiotic. So in many cases, the project want to use like a dual staking model of kinds, or maybe even multi-token staking. So they want to like have some role for their own token as well, maybe enhanced with security from a better source or bootstrapped by a security. So we're kind of seeing those demands there. One thing that we're still interested in and we want to explore more, but it's also like something that is not, it's basically like kind of a new category that isn't really existing yet. It's like stablecoin restaking. So essentially use cases where you secure a decentralized network with a stable asset, which obviously comes with the benefit of that stablecoin not being price volatile, like usually they are in as they are crypto assets. So I think that's like a big category that we haven't really seen many tap into, and I'm curious if you're also hearing like demand from your side for that, or how are you thinking about assets?
Yeah, I think with the stable coins, and especially yield-bearing stable coins, it makes a lot of sense to have them as one of the assets, because as soon as we're enabling utilizing governance tokens for restaking, then you need to compensate somehow the volatility. And if you have in your composition for restaking some yield-bearing stablecoins, then it's easy to do that. And probably this is one of the best options how to utilize the yield-bearing stables. And also, I think, like from our perspective, and what we think is that as we have the curated model and we have lots of different entities that are not interconnected somehow, and we also can't like do something from our end in terms of how they manage the assets, how they work with networks, then they also have completely different access to liquidity, completely different sources of liquidity, and this also helps to decentralize the stake. And probably this also makes sense if you don't have single liquidity source, so you don't have someone who can affect significantly your security if you're the network.
Right. Yeah, that's a very important factor. I think that will be interesting to see play out, because I think the model in Symbiotic overall is that it's very consensual, we like to say, that all the parties can basically make the choice for themselves and opt into different structures, right? Like, who am I receiving stake from? Which is my operator set? How much stake do I want from a certain source? And there's a lot of potential for differentiation in the vaults in terms of what liquidity they bring, because like you're saying, right, in the end, most of the networks, what they should strive for is either have like aligned capital securing their network that maybe also like uses their, if it's like an app chain, let's say it's like a DeFi app chain, then maybe you want to be secured by people that also like bring liquidity to your ecosystem and provide that in like a proof of liquidity way, maybe to your main DEX or to like other DeFi apps on your chain, or you just aim to like create a really decentralized system, so you want to like take stake from very different vaults and different providers, so that you have a very like wide base of liquidity, which is like another approach. And very curious to see. Like, we're working very closely with a bunch of the networks and also the vaults to see this kind of play out. And we are definitely seeing very, very different approaches of how people are trying to utilize Symbiotic. So like it's going to be very exciting the next few weeks as we move this to a mainnet and as we have the first networks launching with us, and I think kind of seeing like some of the experimentation, seeing some of the different models play out a bit. Definitely encourage also everyone that is thinking of or engaging in the system to look into it and think about how they want to approach this, and maybe how if you're building a network, how you might set that up. We're also very open to discuss that actually, like if you literally reach out to us and we want to talk and kind of brainstorm on that.
Yeah, I think it also opens like a huge area of research, just because like it's not very straightforward how you want to build up the composition of the assets that you use for staking, also how you incentivize that liquidity, how you incentivize operators, and it's not that straightforward. For the start it is, but I think there will be lots of things around, probably some derivatives markets or options markets for rewards coming from the networks to operators, for example, because this helps to shift like the window for selling, for example. And this reduces the tension between networks and node operators in that sense. And probably this is one of the opportunities to research and build something around the ecosystem. Also, like just in terms of our approach at Mellow with the risk curated model, I think it's very aligned with having like completely different risk profiles, and to offer networks to have a huge variety of different curators, operators, assets, and this just helps to decentralize those networks. And the next step will probably be to have kind of algorithmic curation. This, like for example, if we have rollup as a service, this will make a lot of sense, because if you have kind of similar types of entities, similar types of networks in one ecosystem, you may have, for example, separate curator or set of curators that will distribute the stake algorithmically depending on TVL, depending on user activity or some other things. And it's also another area of research where curators come in, research teams come in.
Yeah, I think overall we're still at very early innings of this marketplaces, as you're saying, right? Where, yeah, will remain to be seen what the end game looks like. I think we're starting from like a approach of us building the protocol in a way that it's very flexible to accommodate many different use cases, but then in the end, often people want also the simple thing to get started, right? So it's something that will also evolve over time. So I think one of the things we're working on right now is basically like trying to bring up some examples of, you know, how can you actually leverage Symbiotic as a network builder and in what different formats. So if you look at our latest blog, we have something about oracles, like how can an oracle solution like leverage Symbiotic and actually decentralize sort of the process of bringing price data on chain. We're working on a bunch more of those, and we will also have with our network partners that are coming out, like kind of, we will see in the flesh like sort of their implementations. One thing that we've been trying to avoid a bit is that, you know, we come up with one way of using it and that becomes the canonical one that everyone uses, and there's no more like sort of experimentation around different staking designs, which I think basically that's the promise, I think, also of restaking, of shared security, that there is like a certain factor of evolution and like sort of different designs competing against each other and winning out over time, and curators or like especially like LRTs and vaults being like a way of finding the optimal balance, because the capital allocator in the end decides, where should I go, and then essentially the system at large comes to some optimum. So I think, from your perspective of basically being on the other side, like we obviously are in touch, but like I guess you're speaking with the curators and also the networks. You know, how are you seeing this? Some of these topics play out. Do you see people like still wanting to have trading wheels on, looking for help from your side, maybe even since like I guess Mellow is also like one of the teams that's deep in Symbiotic. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's really different between different curators and different networks, and some of them are doing like a lot of work on the BD side and working with different networks, onboarding them, trying to like propose some new things. With the like the new entities coming to us, we usually like try to help them to build up some kind of initial pipeline and start building their ecosystem around things with the DeFi. Also, we do all the technical work on the integrations, and we usually propose different protocols to integrate all the LRTs that we have in the system. So because this also helps us to get more access to liquidity on the secondary market, especially with lending markets. It's something that's coming, and it's one of the main enablers for liquidity in the system. And probably one of the things that we should also cover with the curators topic is the mechanisms for resolvers, because it's something that's not too much explored yet, I think, on any sides. And it can be completely different approaches to how slashing will be implemented, what will be dynamics between the networks and liquidity providers in terms of slashing. So it's probably some of the networks would want to not have any kind of resolver. Some networks will be open to do that, and from the LP's perspective, you always want to have the resolver, so because it just minimizes risks for the stake.
Yeah, maybe just a quick breakdown of like sort of this concept of resolvers in general in Symbiotic. So basically, there is a like ideally neutral third party, or like a mechanism that networks and vaults that provide the stake can agree on to essentially veto slashings or not. And the idea here being that in many cases, slashing can either take also the form of something that maybe isn't like super objectively provable. So you might want to have like some third party decide, okay, was this actually like an incident that we want to like burn, like slash the money or not? And but also there are other factors where it is objectively provable. So in the resolver can also be like a fraud-proof system, it can be a committee, and the idea here in Symbiotic is that basically, yeah, the different participants shape that and come to some agreement on how they're gonna use it. I think it's very interesting from our perspective to see how that will show up. I think given we're very early, we expect to see also some people like starting with like training wheels on. Slashing is very serious. In the end, like you stand to, depending on how it's implemented, be able to like lose people's money, which is of a very serious topic. So just working with the teams right now to like figure out, what are models that maybe you can start with having some system that is relatively secure and has maybe some option for fallback if something goes wrong, versus and then like progressively like sort of removing these training wheels and have like a fully decentralized system that actually like sort of operates without anyone being able to change the rules mid-game, I guess, which is a very interesting design space and something that's like very unique about Symbiotic protocol design, and I'm very excited to see how people are going to work with that.
Yeah, I think it's also very kind of reputation-based part of the system, and just because it's not that much entities who are really interested in slashing to happen. So mostly it's the network that's that initiates the slashing. But end of the day, even this network doesn't want the slashing event to happen. So it's pretty hard to find really neutral entities, and it should be the entity with some significant reputation in the ecosystem, and that could kind of stake this reputation for resolving, because like this can be curators themselves, this can be maybe auditors or some research teams, and or some combination of them, or even this can be the model where there is some kind of committee that can veto slashing, and at the same time there can be the governance on top of this committee that could veto actions of this committee. because in this case it can go into more kind of public sphere if the committee doesn't act really well, and if slashing should happen like in terms of specification, but it doesn't happen because of the committee.
Yeah, I think really interesting design space. I think also, like, you know, in the end, in the world, like democracies or how systems have been built, like court systems in the real world, right, where you kind of have multiple escalating steps, right? You don't go to Supreme Court for some minor slashing, but maybe, you know, have like a phase-wise thing where first you go to your local jurisdiction and maybe that slashing goes through and then everyone's fine. But if it's like about, you know, we're slashing like 20% of the entire supply of some Bitcoin, then like it should involve a lot more actors. And there's probably some something there that, you know, you can like kind of design this phase-wise. And we're really excited to have research in that direction, support that, doing like our own work, of course, as well. And
yeah, I think probably we don't have too much time left, and maybe it would be great to share a bit on the roadmap side and what's happening there with the networks, with the upcoming full-scale launch.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so basically we've been, as I mentioned earlier, live since like June with the deposits. We have been working closely with a lot of network partners and the vault providers to bring the full system to mainnet with slashing. So it's going to be the hopefully first feature complete like shared security protocol with restaking that has slashing, and basically we'll have working closely with current network partners, because Symbiotic itself is just building the shared security layer and not building the network ourselves. We're relying a little bit on the timeline of our partners, because we want to launch the full system only with having networks also live to stake to and to actively delegate. So this will be in the coming weeks. Most of the system is ready. We have like a bunch of different teams working on different parts of the infrastructure. Like the operators have been onboarded on testnet, which has been like a interesting, also like first cool experience there. The vault providers are looking into how they're going to manage the stake delegation. The networks obviously are building out their integrations, which we're supporting heavily. So should be like some exciting weeks coming up, and then we're going to see like the system evolve from there. Obviously, I guess Mellow timeline also then relatively similar, but maybe you have like some extra flavors and cherries there.
On our side, we're also going to fully support from a technical perspective the launch of Symbiotic, and right now we're finalizing things around supporting the delegation from our end. It's technically ready. It's some auditing things getting finalized. Also, we're going to transition to the new architecture, and it enables more modular system, because it makes it kind of layered. And in the new architecture, there is the concept of simple LRT that works directly with vaults on Symbiotic, and it's one asset vault primitive. And on top of that, we'll be enabling the Meta LRT layer, and it will be able to combine a set of simple LRTs under the hood. So it's something that will also help to manage risk profiles for curators to isolate the risks with the underlying sets of networks where they delegate the stake. And also it will help to manage different types of assets.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess we only have like a minute left. Maybe is there any question from the audience to either Mellow or Symbiotic or both, or about restaking in general? All right, I think that's a no. Everything's cleared up. It's very straightforward, everything, of course. So yeah, thanks so much for having us. And yeah, thanks, Nick, for joining me on the Fireside Chat.
Thank you.
And thanks, Johnny, for organizing.